Well, good day and welcome back. Today's topic is, well, we're going to talk about what is a good age to start a horse. Because, particularly in recent years, there's been a lot of debate on that issue. And, well, I thought I'd talk about it and talk about some common practices and some pros and cons and a few facts and a few theories. And, well, don't expect a definitive answer here. I do have an opinion. I do have an opinion of when I think it'd be a good time. But again, we'll start with what your definition of starting is. Because, some people will consider starting a horse is when you start to ride it. Others, well, myself, I consider starting a horse as the beginning of its education, which, in my opinion, that can basically start at day one. That doesn't have to be any specific age at all, because there's lots of things that you can do to educate them at a very early age that doesn't require any strenuous activity whatsoever. Teaching them to socialize, teaching them manners, to accept the halter, lead, and a whole bunch of things. Actually, an awful lot can be done at a very, very early age. However, for many, many years, the standard, and is still quite common for a lot of people, is 2-year-olds. And I don't agree with that one. I think that's too young. But I'm not going to get into that too much because that's just going to start a debate. Even to this day in the racing industry, starting 2-year-olds is very common. They have 2-year-old races. And in fact, because of the way the aging goes on race horses, some of those horses are actually much less than 2 years old, which is, in my opinion, definitely too young. But we'll get into that in a minute, because there's some that go to the opposite end of the opposite extreme. Because in recent years, there have been lots and lots of studies done that say that the skeletal structure of a horse isn't fully matured until about 6 years of age. And various parts of the horse develop at different ages. And, even different breeds develop at different ages. Some sooner and slower, and some can be quite deceiving. This one in particular would be a good example of that. She's a quarter horse, although she's plenty old enough now. But if you'll notice the muscling on those front legs compared to, say, this one, there's a lot more muscle there. And quarter horses tend to develop muscles at a lot earlier age, and it can be quite deceiving. You can have a very stout-looking horse, and you think, hey, this thing can handle some work. But in fact, its bone structure is actually way immature. It's not even close to keeping up with the muscle structure. But there's been multitudes of studies done that say that a horse is not fully mature until 6 years of age. So some people like to think, well, that's it. We're going to leave the horse out in pasture. We are not going to touch it until it's a 6-year-old. Well, I think that's going a bit extreme, especially if you don't start educating the horse, to be handled and such. Prior to that, you're going to run into lots of problems when you finally do start training it, because it's going to be really concerned about pretty much everything that you do with it. Whereas I think, like I said, I think the education can start day one. Is a horse fully matured until age 6? Well, there's enough studies that would indicate that's probably true. However, I think there is a balance there. There's also another phenomenon. There's a study done, I believe it was in humans, quite a few years ago, that suggests that depending on the demands, and which areas of the body require extra strength in the joints and muscles because of the nature of the work that they're doing, even before they're fully matured, they will develop extra in those areas that require the extra muscle or bone. And that's a study that was done long before they did any study on horses and their skeletal structures and that sort of thing. So I don't know, there might be some truth to that, but I think, again, balance. I think there's a good balance in everything that we do, if done properly. When do you start a horse? Well, like I said, I think my definition of starting, just about day one. When should you actually start riding a horse? Well, I wouldn't suggest getting on one before about maybe 3. Definitely no full-time hard work until, well, pretty close to 6, somewhere in there. A little bit of light work before that, a little bit of light riding probably won't hurt him if it's done, I mean, let's face it, a couple of laps of the round pen and a walk, pretty unlikely it's going to hurt a horse. So, like I said, all things in balance. There's enough evidence to suggest that they are not fully mature skeletally until 6 years of age. However, I don't think we need to wait that long before we can actually get on their back, and definitely do not wait that long before you start educating them on how to behave, how to accept a halter, how to lead, perhaps even load into a trailer just in case there's an emergency and you got to take them somewhere. Those are things that you want to be able to do with your horse. So what's a good age to start a horse at? Well, I've given you some information. You got to make the decision for yourself. I'm not going to say definitely for sure one way or the other what would be a good age, because that's just going to start an argument. Usually does. So anyhow, what's a good age to start a horse at? Well, there's some of the information. You decide for yourself. Have a good day.